From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Duke, and along with my colleague Martha Kennedy, I'm one of the curators of popular and applied graphic art here at the Library of Congress, and in charge of collecting caricature and cartoon, which is why we brought you all here today. We thank the AAEC for joining us today. We think that we're a good match. The Library of Congress has been collecting cartoon art since the 19th century, and we've amassed in the Prints and Photographs Division a collection of 128,000 cartoon prints and drawings. We have the Prints and Photographs online catalog, which features about 1.4 million items out of our 15 million item holding. And that does not include most of the work of Herb Block or many of the 2,000 editorial cartoonists represented in the Art Wood collection. So we always encourage you to come back and make use of the collections of the Prints and Photographs Division of the Library of Congress. We've been promoting caricature and cartoon in particular since 1978 when the Caroline and Irwin Swan Memorial Fund came to the Library of Congress, and that permits us to do exhibitions, including the one that will open on September 22nd, Down to Earth, Herb Block and Photographers Look at the Environment. And I especially invite you all to come back to the Graphic Arts Galleries on the ground floor of the Jefferson Building and come to view that exhibition. It'll also be available online from the library's exhibitions page. You are all invited, those of you who are 16 and up are invited to the Prints and Photographs Division for a display of presidential election cartoons from 1836 to 2008. The Prints and Photographs Division is in room 339 on the other side of the building between the blue and the red elevators. Finally, before I turn over the floor, I'd like to say, if you ask a question after this presentation, then you are giving the library permission to film and broadcast your image. Forever and ever. And at this point, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce the president of the Association of American Editorial Cartoonists, John Cole, who is a graduate of Washington and Lee University, where he started his career as an editorial cartoonist. In 1985, he was hired by the Durham Morning Herald, and in 2005, he joined the Times-Tribune in Scranton, Pennsylvania, from which he currently draws his cartoons, which are distributed internationally by Kagel Cartoons. And he has one book to his name, perhaps more, which I love this title, because you cartoonists come up with such great titles for your books. Politics, Barbecue, and Balderdash. And without further ado, I'm going to turn over this event to John Cole.
And welcome. This is the formal opening of the 56th annual convention of the Association of American Editorial Cartoonists. This is sort of a soft opening. We're having the public in to hear our panelists today. And they're presenting an inky and pixel view, or pixelated. It'd be pixelated if it were later in the day, I think, but it's a little early for that. Of the 2012 campaign, we have Ted Rall of Los Angeles Times, Lalo Alcaraz of Pocho.com, Steve Kelly of the New Orleans Times-Picayune, and Scott Stannis of the Chicago Tribune. And I believe we're going to just lead. Oh, I want to also especially thank Sarah Duke and Martha Kennedy for helping arrange this. This has been great. And the best thing, I know that Sarah is a huge fan of cartoons because I follow her on Facebook, and I really enjoy her daily political cartoon of the day. You know, she has great taste in classic cartoon art. But anyway, I guess we're going to lead off with Steve. So.
Well, now the thing's over here and the microphone's over here, and how am I going to do all this? Greetings, and thank you all for coming out. This is supposed to be a smackdown between the left and the right politically, just so you understand what we're trying to accomplish here. The idea is you're going to hear from these, as you look at the stage up here, this is your left. You'll note who is the farthest to the left. That's this guy. And the guy in the bow tie, of course, farthest to the right. Who would have guessed that, right? Okay, and then Lalo and I are kind of, we shade a little bit. So our hope is that by showing you these cartoons and by speaking to you about the current, the big brouhaha, the national presidential election, that we can help you decide for yourself which candidate to vote against. So that's the whole idea here. I'm just going to motor through some cartoons. Each of us is going to do that, and we want to allow plenty of time for interaction with the audience, okay? So if I direct your attention to the screens, and we're just going to look at some of my cartoons, and then I'm going to pass off. This is just the summing up the election, and then we go. I wanted to show you a little something about the Congress, because let's face it, it's not, the problems that the country is having is not just about the candidates. This is kicking the debt can down the road. Trump's pullout is disappointing. I'm glad Newt is running, but I really hope Sarah Palin will get in. Boy, you Republicans are getting so desperate. Actually, I'm a political cartoonist. That's Sarah Palin. I have that fire in my belly, she said. I know the feeling. It's the really great thing to do is to take a politician's actual words and use them to make fun of him. And during President Obama's last State of the Union address, he actually uttered these words: "We've come too far to turn back now." That's Donald Trump over there on the right, Mitt Romney. You guys hold him down and I'll cut off his hair. That's Romney with the Bain Capital, and Obama's pointing at him. "America, I smell something fishy." I'm starting to figure out which way this room goes. Just getting some subtle indications. There's the president, and that's the economy over there. It's all wilted, and oh, well, if you zoom in there close enough. This is flip-flops. You've got government health care and same-sex marriage, and Romney tells the president, you get used to them. And these are Obamacare sparklers. Aren't they pretty? There's that Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney, and this is the Tea Party. She's leaning in saying, you're really not my type, but your wingman makes you irresistible. Thank you. Do you support Chick-fil-A's CEO on traditional marriage, or do you favor activists' calls for a nationwide boycott? I miss the separation of church and fast food. Family net worth off 40% in 3 years. Do we support the failed policies that got us into this mess, or the failed policies that haven't gotten us out of it? A lot of times I like to do cartoons that kind of, score both sides for it, because we're in this pickle and they're supposed to be getting us out, and they're really not accomplishing that. This is why it's best that the president isn't going to the London Olympics. You didn't win that. Let me just say that I anticipated that reaction from this crowd. Okay. U.S. Open, that's either about the golf tournament or the president's new immigration policy. Romney Hood and Obama Loney, candidates trade barbs. I think both sides should stop the grade school name calling and get back to the fictitious platitudes voters care about. Meanwhile, in the pole vault, that's Jobs on the rather short pole vaulting pole. This was when George Bush came out and announced that he was in favor of Mitt Romney for president. Now, if things don't go well in November, I can blame Bush. Harry Reid on the Mars mission. Why are we spending $2.5 billion to dig up dirt on Mars when we could be using it to dig up dirt on Romney? Sir, with the race tightening, some Democrats say you should look for another running mate. How could I do that to Barack? And finally, this is the economy and Ralphing in the men's room. How about seconds? Anyway, I'm going to pass it off now to my very good friend Lalo Alcaraz.
Oh, yeah. Who said conservatives aren't funny? I always say that. But Steve Kelly was very funny. I knew Steve Kelly when I was actually, we were both in San Diego, and I went up to him, and I always tell embarrassing stories about myself, but I went up to him at a convention, and I told him, "Do you remember me? I was a college student at San Diego State. I came up to you and told you were a big racist." And he goes, "No, I don't remember." I go, "Good. Phew." I'll just leave that story there. So according to my own bio, I am the most prolific Chicano artist in the country. I do a comic strip called La Cucaracha, and this was my 9/11 tribute, not very political, just kind of sometimes you got to pull back and just do a commemorative cartoon. Or you do this cartoon I totally ripped off from Chris Rock, who said they should just have an empty chair up there with the name Osama bin Laden on it at the DNC. Here's Mitt Romney, the silent vigil. Osama bin Laden. Here's an older cartoon I did on 9/11. How's that for special effects, Steve Kelly? This is my Twin Teepees cartoon. I did this a year after, this is a 1 year anniversary of 9/11, so it wasn't like I did it last week. And it was to mark the real genocide, not that the Twin Towers tragedy was not a tragedy, but there's lots of big terroristic acts that have occurred on American soil, and one is the treatment of the Native American people on this continent. Self-deport, self-abort, we're the party of self-reliance. Here's Bill Clinton during his speech at the DNC. Doing what everybody wanted was a Democrat to come out and just say facts and blow the Romney lies away. Here's Chris Christie. Down there, Mitt Romney's back there saying, "Don't forget to mention my name, Chris." This guy's running around a Republican convention. It's not easy being a GOP convention minority seat filler. Mitt Romney's money. Kicking it in the Caymans. I have a friend on Twitter. His name is Mexican Mitt Romney, and he is a member of the Juan Percent. And if you don't follow him, he was named by Politico as the #1 top fake political Twitter account of all time. That means in the universe, in perpetuity, forever. Amen. And he's a very good friend of mine, and I'm behind him 100%. And he's very hilarious, and you should follow him at Mexican Mint. Show me your papers. The Curiosity Rover. And I think I blew through all my election cartoons. This is the Mexican election. It's an election. And here's the Secret Service scandal in Colombia. Colombia, we're not just known for drugs anymore. I promise you the president has a big stick. And yes, we can. Si se puede. Barack Obama giving Dolores Huerta of the United Farm Workers the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And let me try to end on DreamHack. Wait, hold on. Occupy. Wait, hold on. Show me your papers. Arizona. Brown Pride. Oh, that's Jerry Brown. Somebody got mad for portraying Brown Pride as a cholo or a homeboy. And I said, that's not a homeboy. That's a 76-year-old white man, Jerry Brown, dressed as a homeboy. And I think call me out of touch, but dressage horses sure are graceful. And I'm still, all right, I'm done. Thank you.
Oh, God, the interwebs. I'm an old conservative guy. We don't believe in that. Anyway, I'm Scott Stantz with the Chicago Tribune. I wanted to kind of give you a base idea of where we're coming from the right. Jeff McNally, when he would give a speech, the great cartoonist, would always quote, Dave Barry. And they were having a cocktail in Washington. And this beautiful view of the monuments and the Capitol at sunset. And Dave Barry looks at it and he goes, you know what? This is so wrong. This view is just awful. And McNally goes, what? What do you mean? He goes, there are no smokestacks. They don't make anything but trouble here. And yes, the bow tie did come from the conservative shop at Sears, just so you know. I'm going to go through these very quickly so we can have Q&A. My stuff is not nearly as fancy as theirs. There's no animation, so I'm just going to show and read. This is a basic Barack Obama. Of course, he was a smoker, claims he's not anymore. And of course, when a politician tells you something, you can believe it. So he's just got a pack of cigarettes and filtered spending saying, I can't seem to quit. Of course, on the right, on the Republicans, you have Dole saying, and McCain, Mitt Romney saying, it's my turn. What can go wrong there? This is my view of the president. It's Fidel Castro in Cuba actually did say, we're throwing out our old economic model. And the president's leaning and says, ooh, can I have it? And our debt in 2012 passed 100.3% of GDP. So you have Zorbama the Greek. Opa! Anytime you can say Opa, it's a good cartoon. This was after the midterm elections when the Republicans took the House. And I just love this. It's let the honeymoon commence. Yeah, I thought that was funny. And so the left, the nanny state and all that stuff. So of course you have, I'm not sure what the hell he is, the mayor of New York, Bloomberg, outlined big gulps to stave off obesity. And there's the Statue of Liberty with the Liberty big gulp. Bloomy saying, drop it, chubs. And it's the nanny. This was when Trump endorsed Mitt Romney, and Trump is saying, you had me at, I don't care about poor people. Let me take a quick break here and say, I don't like, as a conservative Republican, I worked on both Reagan campaigns in 80 and 84. I have serious Republican street creds. This Republican Party really makes me very uneasy and makes my teeth itch. So if you see something that seems inconsistent, that's why. This is, of course, we must consider deep cuts to your $70 billion green defense budget. That's a true number. President Obama saying, and it's working so well. And the next thing, it's a submarine, and someone saying, strike the solar panels. And the GOP was looking for anyone. I mean, good God, Santorum? Really? So you had the elephant running away and Mitt saying something like this could make a lesser fellow question his inevitability. And of course, then he started to take on more and more conservative views. So he took on the sweater vest. He goes, "What? This is the front runner." I mean, this is the third time the guy's run for president. You think he'd get some of it right. But then back to the left, there's Obamonomics, the small business, and you didn't build that. And of course, my case for re-election is clear. You have free guns for bad guys, the economy, Commerce Department, the leaks, the debt, of course. Oh, went too far. There we go. Solo twister, he says, and he's losing. And this is something that really disturbs me. I really wish someone would present some way of finance campaign, finance reform that makes sense. But the super PACs, they're now saying it's going to be over $1 billion a candidate. We're talking about a $2 to $3 billion campaign. Something is very, very wrong. And of course, here you have Fast and Furious, the truth with executive privilege as the cork and the non-smoking gun. You have the Obama campaign, the news came out that we're spending more than we're taking in the White House going, and? This was early on in Syria, Assad and President Obama seeming to be rather impotent with our two friends, leaning in saying, President Putin, a word if I, not the good time, I'll call it promise. And the Chinese president saying, some people have no respect for a true artist. Bravo, bravo. And this is the Wall Street showed there's a baby bull market. It says, forward to November so I can tax you into steak. Giddy up. And again, this is Mitt Romney at the door, the Mormon at the door, and he's just knock, 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 knock. Okay, you win. He's going, is now a good time? And of course, Aiken, God bless him, was talking about legitimate rape. And this was when they were thinking of Isaac was going to hit Tampa during the convention, and he's looking with the elephant out to the storm saying, I'm told it's not a legitimate storm. And of course, let the humanizing commence. And this was the first cartoon. I covered both Tampa and the Democrats in Charlotte, and this was the first one out of the gate. It says, okay, convince me, which seemed to be what was coming out of the gate. And there's Uncle Sam looking at Romney and Ryan. And here coming from the Democrats is, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And unemployment's going, you bet. And during the Democrat convention, the national debt zoomed past $16 trillion. And so using, as Steve mentioned, you like to use the opposition's words against them using their slogan, forward. And this is, you can't read it now. You can go to my blog at chicagotribune.com/Stantis. But this was, I put everything together after covering all this stuff. And it's, are you better off today than you were 2 weeks ago? And having lived through all of that, yet. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. I have to apologize a little bit in advance for my voice this afternoon, and for my lack of ability to tell time. I am Ted Rall. I do cartoons for the Los Angeles Times and for syndication, and my website's rall.com. I always like to put up my hate quotes in these things. Okay, Americans, we rule the world. I hope the president I didn't vote for arms the rebels we know nothing about against the regime we also know nothing about in Syria, which I can't find on a map until I forget about it. Colombia scandal again. Finally, Obama created 20 whole jobs, but they're in Colombia. Romney needs to move right to shore up the GOP base. Obama needs to move right to get swing voters. What about left-wing voters? They need to move right to catch up to Obama. You can tell, that's why I sit all the way on the left here, and I'm wearing the red shirt. But I would vote for the Kenyan-born, Alinsky-loving, radical socialist caricature of Obama. U.S. troops, I got one. U.S. troops will stay in Afghanistan until at least 2024. You haven't heard that, but it's actually true. Obama saying, someday, this will all be yours, maybe the grave. Romney was a bully in high school. Campaign gold. Let's discuss it after the sanctions briefings on Iran, Burma, North Korea, Cuba, and Zimbabwe, because, we're bullies. Anyway. This is Obama with his staff figuring out what the new campaign poster should be this time. Could be worse. Prevented a depression. 4 more years. We're going to need more coffee. Mitt Romney says that if he paid more taxes than required, he wouldn't be qualified to be president. He actually said this. So I said, chintziness is a way of life. If I did more than the bare minimum, he tells his wife, I wouldn't be qualified to be your husband. In the future, after the economic and environmental and military collapse of America, the last 2 Americans gather on their last patch of American land to consider what to do next. How about another war? I'm down with that. Republicans downplay their unpopular stances on social issues to seduce voters. Too severe? Maybe basic white instead. Go with the baby doll dress. You're supposed to laugh at that, all right. This was after the shootings in Aurora, Colorado at the movie theater. The Obama generic tragic comment, which is suitable for all occasions. I am deeply saddened by this senseless tragedy. At this difficult time, our hearts go out to the people of the victims. Their families and friends must know that they are in our thoughts and prayers. The country is with you. We support you. Mike's cold. Yay. What are you doing? Waiting for my heart to come back from wherever it went out to. Oh, I hate that. My hearts go out to you. It's stupid. All right. Paul Ryan says he won't take away your Social Security or Medicare if you're already old. How are people under 55 supposed to avoid a future of dumpster diving? Press-on wrinkles, gobs of aging cream, fake driver's license, security, young, no, pre-old. Obama defends the new aggressive tone of his campaign. Don't worry, I'm still governing like a pussy. Hi, kids. Obama's failure to help foreclosure victims seen as #1 threat to his re-election campaign. They're coming to evict me. Help, I have a family. No can do. Your paperwork is missing. And it's Bane Bonk. The truth comes out about the death of Osama bin Laden in the new book by the ex-SEAL. No chance to surrender, no dignified burial, just a cheap mafia rub-out before sleeping with the fishes. And so this is from The Sopranos, Christopher Moltisanti chopping up a body. Also, I have a Goomba, he tells Michelle as she walks in on him, chopping up heads. Here we go again. That right-wing talk is just to get elected. Look at his past. He was reasonable. He's smart, educated. After the election, he'll move back to the left. Looking down at, we've been through this before. And I'll wrap up with this one. Shortly after a new president takes office, he can't do anything. He has to save his political capital. Just into the first term, he can't do anything. The other party controls Congress. During the re-election campaign, he can't do anything. He needs to get re-elected. Then he'll do something. At the beginning of the second term, he can't do anything. A lame duck has no political capital. At the end of the second term, he can't do anything. He has to get his party's nominee elected to succeed him. Shortly after the new president takes office, he can't do anything. He has to save his political capital. That's it. So, someone's got a mic.
Someone talk.
Anyone have any questions, comments? Yeah.
Snide remarks.
Yeah. The panel will now accept questions from the audience.
Do we need this to get to them? Oh, no, they got it.
Hey, Lala, I was wondering if you are the person, truly the person who invented self-deportation, so that Romney could talk about that.
Oh, thank you. Yes, back in 1994, I don't know if you saw me, not in 94, but recently on the Rachel Maddow show, talking about self-deportation. I had created a fake, the governor of California was Pete Wilson. Yeah, the governor of California is named Pete Wilson. He was a very anti-Mexican immigrant, specifically, and he was running on this Proposition 187. And we, as satirists, were so kind of sick to our stomachs of hearing all the racism and all the Arizona-style racism that was happening in California back then, that we decided to create a fake Republican Latino group called Hispanics for Wilson. And because Pete Wilson had a group called Latinos for Wilson, and it consisted of 3 Cuban American attorneys. that were paid off to be his Latino supporters. And so, long story short, we created this faith group. I was the leader, Daniel Deportado, and I urged immigrants to self-deport. And we created self-deportation centers so that people would just be sick of all the racism and go back to Mexico. And we also wanted to deport the Chinese back to Mexico. We didn't care, you know. We also called for the deportation of Linda Ronstadt, because she was, at that time, in her Mexican music stage, she was attracting too many Mexicans to the country, and also burritos were declared biological weapon. And so it was a mockery of all the anti-immigrant hysteria. That went full bloom in Arizona, and now in Alabama also, and other parts of the country. So, yes, I'm 100% sure that 2 months or maybe 6 weeks later, after we came out on international television as Hispanics for Wilson, Pete Wilson picked up the self-deportation concept and ran with it all the way to Romney. Next question.
Well, could I just make a comment on that? Because the right
By all means.
needs to speak to this.
Equal time.
Yeah, just because there are people in this country who are opposed to illegal immigration, so there are people who are opposed to, say, illegal right-hand turns. That doesn't mean that they are opposed to all right-hand turns, just the ones that aren't legal. And I don't personally see anything wrong with a country enforcing its borders. Lots of countries do that, including our neighbors. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, it's very easy to say that someone who opposes illegal immigration is a racist, but I don't think that that's the case, not with Governor Wilson and not with Mitt Romney. I don't believe that. I think that these are people who want the nation's immigration laws respected.
If I may.
You may.
Well, I agree that every country has the right to defend its, and to protect its national borders, and you're not really a nation state unless you do. But it's such a coincidence that all the people who are so interested in protecting the borders are racist in other ways that have nothing to do with protecting borders. I mean, they tend to be nativists, they tend to be right-wingers, they tend to be people who want to eliminate affirmative action programs. So it's just an interesting coincidence that there aren't a lot of, say, left-wingers who are obsessed with this issue.
Scott Standis.
Okay, I don't watch Rachel Maddow, so that may surprise you. But you can't paint someone who believes that illegal means against the law. The voting patterns, and you imply that every voter in Arizona, rather, is a racist. It's a broad brush that doesn't work. Protecting our borders, particularly in a post 9/11 world, is important. It became more important after that. That's it.
Oh. Okay, when you guys are campaigning against illegal Irish immigrants, then call me.
No, but the Dutch pissed me off, and they must be out of this
the
country.
dirty Dutch is another subject.
Okay, can I ask my question? Yeah, actually, it's kind of related. I'm wondering, from what I recall, when Obama was first elected, there was a lot of discourse among political cartoonists about how they were going to portray him, the racial kind of element. And 4 years on, I was wondering how that's evolved for you guys, and how, in general, whether there's any instances where this issue came up in your own work or others.
This absolutely came up, and I have to admit that a lot of our members were lazy, and they took a racial stereotype and they used it. If you look at the president, he has a very thin top lip, for instance, and he's actually a pretty handsome guy, except for those big honking ears. So yeah, it was a learning curve, and a lot of people had their antennas up and were looking for offense where none was meant. But I will be the first to admit up here for our membership that a lot of them were lazy, and they drew him in a fairly stereotypical and rather despicable way.
There's a very long tradition in caricature of that sort of racist depiction of black people.
Yeah, personally, I just never give a crap about it. I mean, I don't care what color somebody is. No, I really don't. The whole idea is to judge a man by the content of his character.
Excuse me, if you cannot draw a caricature of somebody without, excuse me. If you can't draw a caricature of someone without actually coloring their skin, then you can't draw a caricature. Because you could draw a caricature of Barack Obama and leave the skin exactly the same color, and it would, as you leave everyone else's, and it would look just like you.
But
if you did it right.
wouldn't Barack Obama take offense at the fact that you were dropping the color out of his skin? There's nothing wrong with the color of his skin.
Of course there isn't. I'm simply saying, I grew up in Orangeburg, South Carolina.
I don't know that my readers
And
are
that is-
really take into consideration where Kate Palmer was, where she grew up.
I'm saying there are many African Americans who live in my hometown. In fact, it's a majority African American. And when I started drawing, I realized that what makes a person look like him or herself is not the color of their skin, but the shape of their face, the shape of their eyes, their nose, what their hair looks like. And incidentally, later on, if you thought about it, you could color in the skin, but I'm just too lazy to color skin like that.
Well, real quick, Kate, I want to kind of use that and dovetail into a larger discussion, if I may, on cartooning, and that is cartooning race. I worked at the Birmingham News for 13 years.
I made all y'all white, by the way.
What's that?
I made all y'all white, by the way.
Not me.
Made all of
It's
us.
77% African American. And now I come up to Chicago. The head of the teachers union, you may have heard we're having a little bit of a strike up there. And I drew, and I actually had a cartoon pulled the other day. I should have included it, and I didn't. And it was the head of the teachers union. And he said, my editor was, you drew her fat and ugly. And I just wanted to say, dude,
Okay.
she is.
Bella Absent once accused me of making her look fat and old, and that's what she was. And I've also read books that say men have a hard time caricaturing women. You shouldn't have a hard time caricaturing women because they're just like men. They have features and stuff like that. Okay, somebody else can do this.
Yeah, I think, I think that it's important to obviously try to be as sensitive as possible. But, one way that kind of, I think people like maybe Lalo and Steve and I kind of benefit is by having somewhat abstract drawing styles, which limits the exposure that you have to the accusation of using racially offensive stereotypes in your caricatures. If you're using a more traditional caricature style like Scott does, it's more treacherous, it's more dangerous. When you use more shorthand in a more abstract drawing style. It's one of the reasons that, aside from the fact that I can't draw, that I developed that style. So,
I could say, just speaking personally, one of the earliest cartoons I drew about Obama after he won exposed me to what the reader will bring to the cartoon. And I drew a cartoon of Obama, at the bottom of a mountain. He was a mountain climber, and the mountain went up into the clouds, lightning everywhere. It said expectations. He had a length of rope. He had a pickaxe in one hand, a length of rope in the other, and the length of rope dangled. He was very small in the character, but the length of rope dangled down below him. I started getting letters from California people saying, "You put a tail on President Obama." And no, I didn't. And actually, I said, "Look at the cartoon." But that's what you've got to be careful of. People will read things into a cartoon that you never intended to. So never intended.
A lot of the time, too, readers will infer racism because they don't appreciate the message of your cartoon.
Yeah.
When I did the day after the election, I drew Barack Obama fist bumping Martin Luther King, and people loved it. Everybody loved it. No one complained about it. But the caricature that I did then of Obama is virtually identical to ones I've done in countless cartoons where people have accused me of racism for my depiction of the president. And I'm like, well, this is exactly the same drawing of him that I did, and no one had a problem with it. So, you do have to realize that every reader, all of us, walk around with biases, not racism, but biases against the ideas that other people present, and sometimes they overtake our rational side.
JP.
Question for you, all four of you. Lalo's self-deportation thing is probably the best example, but I've seen cartoons from each of you guys where it eventually becomes true, where you have politicians who are behaving this way. How do you keep up with an electorate that's self-satirizing?
Yes.
That's a great question.
Yeah. I'm just gonna say it's pretty tough. I mean, you just kind of, we're almost like note takers sometimes, you know, you just take down a transcript of what they say. So.
We're artists. We draw what we see.
For me, Generalissimo El Busho was probably the moment in my career like that. After the Gore versus Bush recount controversy, I, like many Americans, believed that Bush was illegitimately installed by a judicial coup d'etat. So I drew him like a General Pinochet or some other, you know, South American dictator, like with ribbons and medals all over, and with a big hat, you know. It's kind of like Borat's, what's his name, the new movie, The Dictator, kind of like that. And it didn't take. For a long time, people just, they looked for 9 months. They looked at that depiction and did not understand why the hell I was drawing him that way. And then 9/11 happened, and as soon as the new bellicose Bush emerged, it just fit. And everybody was like, oh my God, that's the perfect caricature, you know, and everyone assumes that it's from 9/11, but it's really not. And then as it went on, I kind of wanted to up it, and you know, because Bush got crazier and crazier, legalizing torture and suspending habeas corpus. So, but I couldn't, you know, I had boxed myself into a corner because I had made him the most ugly person I possibly knew how to, and I just couldn't go further. So it makes me sad.
I also want to say real fast, I get heat once from like a 1% of feminists when I portray Jan Brewer, the governor of Arizona, as a wrinkled mummy. But I mean, I think she's a demon that should go back to hell now. And it shows in her face, I'm sorry. She's like just evil personified, and it shines through in a glorious satanic way.
I don't think she's evil. I think she's stupid. That's a massive difference. On a local level, for me, it was the governor of Alabama at the time was Fob James. His dad's name was Fob, I'm not kidding. And for some reason, I drew him, he said that we're taking care of civil rights, the schools, and Children First, which was children welfare. We'd already taken care of it, and we don't have to talk about it no more. So I drew him as Tinker Fob. He had a tutu and a wand. Ever since that time, I could not draw him with, if I did draw him without the wand and the tutu, I would get scads in mail. The funniest part of this whole story was an aide of his called after he lost his re-election bid. He says, yeah, you know, someone gave the governor a wand for Christmas. Oh, well, that's kind of awesome. That's funny. He goes, yeah, and it really hurt when he whacked you with it.
Okay. In the back.
Do you feel that the 2012 presidential elections are easier or more difficult to use for your cartoons than are prior elections that you have worked on? And if so, why? Thank you.
I want to say, yeah, I mean, in 2004, John Kerry, it was John Kerry, right? He was a snoozer.
He was your Mitt Romney.
Yeah, he was our Mitt Romney, and I expected Mitt Romney to be like that, but Mitt Romney, although he looks like human clip art, is the gift that keeps on giving. He just keeps saying crazy crap, and so it makes it a lot easier. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I'm so happy this year. I hate both candidates so much. You know, I mean, Obama is betraying right-wing warmongering, Guantanamo leaving open, ignoring the economy.
bad person.
And Mitt Romney's even worse. He's like the Monopoly man. He might as well have a monocle and a top hat. You just can't do better.
I actually, this will be maybe the third time in my entire life I will say this. I agree with Ted. Only as far as we want so much on the right to believe that Romney is conservative. He isn't. I mean, there's a video record of this. They actually had, the moving pictures, cameras recording him when he ran for Senate and when he was governor of Massachusetts. And on the left, you have the same delusion going on. You hope this guy's a lefty, and he isn't. So the issues make this campaign very compelling. The candidates do not.
I will say this. If I were bankrupt and I were to seek financial advice from somebody, I would prefer that it came from someone who graduated from Harvard Business School and Harvard Law School at the same time and made, George Bush did not go to Harvard Business School. George Bush went to Yale. And went and got 2 degrees simultaneously and ran a company very well and turned around a lot of companies that were failing and turned them into successful companies. I think, personally, this is just my opinion, and you can hate me for it if you want, but I believe that the country is fortunate to have this man applying for the job at this point in history. That's just my opinion.
I would also ask Mitt Romney for hair grooming tips.
Dude, you got great hair.
I was at a debate between Ann Coulter and James Carville earlier this year at my alma mater, and James Carville, I thought, made a trenchant observation that he feels sorry for Mitt Romney because Mitt Romney is a sane man being forced to act crazy, because the party is pulling him. So I don't think it. Who knows what he really thinks in his heart of hearts? But anyway, another question?
Yeah, thanks. This is more of a philosophical question. I guess you almost touched on this already just in your interactions. I'm a scholar of comics. I write a lot about comics and cartoons, and I consider comics a very rich and noble art form, a complex art form. I'm wondering, nowadays when it's become kind of a truism to say that we all have our filters, people on the right tend to listen to just whatever their opinions, are being, or their opinions being affirmed. People on the left tend to be basically, Rachel Maddow or whatever, and so we can all basically never encounter conflicting opinions in our lives if we really want to. Do you think that political cartoons or your work can help to bridge those sorts of chasms, or can they exacerbate them? Is there something about political cartoons in particular that can add to the conversation rather than shut it down?
I hate to keep seizing the microphone, but I do have a coherent opinion on this, and that is that political cartoons are just like written columns and other opinion pieces, except for one critical fact, and that is that they are consumed by everyone who comes to the page. 100% of the people who go to an editorial page read the cartoon. A few of them read the columns, a few of them read the editorials, a few of them read the letters. Everyone reads the cartoon because it's visual, it's accessible, and oftentimes it's amusing. And so we do have a very important role to play, and I think that we are, if not opinion makers, we are certainly purveyors of opinion and inspirers of conversations about things. And that's really the only chance that we have as a country and a community, if we're completely divided along partisan lines, is discussion. And to the degree that cartoons inspire discussion, I think that they're helpful.
Can I say something? Scott and I do comic strips in daily newspapers also.
Hey, hello.
Hello?
I got a comic strip.
You got a comic strip?
Yeah, man.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sure it's real good, Steve. Don't write about Mexicans, please. But, I don't know if you guys, both of you, feel the urge. Sometimes a lot of my comics are Latino-centric, but a lot of the politics are left-leaning. And and I have my steady group of stalkers / hate letter writers that just cannot stop reading my comic strip, even though they want me deported or whatever. and they will berate me whenever I say anything about Romney or Rustam or whatever. But when I do one occasional cartoon that paints maybe both sides as jerks, oh my God, they come gushing and go, hey, well, you know, you're sane now, you know, you're completely okay in my book. And then the next day they're like, you Mexican bastard, I hate you. You know, what do you get?
Strangely, you Mexican bastard. Damnedest thing. No, I do. In my comic strip, Lean's right, as you might imagine, but I have characters that can discuss the issues in both sides. The problem is, and I'm touching on what you're saying, the culture is so polarized in a lot of ways that if you dare to do that and dare to say the other side may have a point, basically I think they're wrong, and that's okay, but there's some credence to what they say. Oh my gosh, I've had my conservative membership card revoked dozens of times because of that. I agree with Steve. I think what the editorial cartoon should do is invoke conversation. Maybe my ambition's a little too lofty here. I want to either piss you off or have you say yes. That's my goal each and every day. But more than that, I want you to know why you said yes or why you got pissed off. I want you to think. And cartoons, humor, you have to be pretty smart to understand both of them, frankly. And so if you've made it to the editorial page, if you've gone that far, congratulations. And you look at the cartoon and you get it, great. But if I can get you to think, and it doesn't matter how you think, but if you think and you can solidify the rationale behind your beliefs, then I think I've done a pretty good job, maybe bigger than I expected.
They never let me draw a comic strip. Digitalization is changing things. As cartoons migrate more and more to the interwebs, those seem to be more segmented along ideological lines. I mean, newspapers are, of course, an opportunity for a left-wing cartoon to be read by a conservative reader or vice versa. But that's that's existing less and less online. For example, I think all of us except Steve is distributed by Universal, UClick, one of the major syndicates. And what they do on their website is they're starting to segregate their cartoons, like there's editorial cartoons left, editorial cartoons right, and they promote them that way. So, it's going to be easier and easier online and that's the way it's going to be. Liberal readers are going to seek out liberal editorial cartoons and vice versa. So I think the web is becoming less and less of an opportunity for us to have that national discussion.
And I find on the Go Comic site, I'll get there's still the standard group that always just will read all the comics on the site, and I get the same people arguing with themselves. It's kind of neat that you create this community of people that love and hate you.
Would never want to meet in person.
Yeah, yeah. And also, I'm selling merchandise at that table.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Right there.
I have a question for Mr. Stankus about how you got the job at the Chicago Tribune after they had left the position empty for so long.
I knew where the editor's kids went to school. Plain white van. And no, I get asked this, and by other cartoonists, how'd you do it? What's the trick? I said, well, maybe they like my work. No, they go, no, that can't be it. What else did you do? For those of you who don't know what the question, Jeff McNally, the amazing genius cartoonist for the Chicago Tribune, passed away in the year 2000. And a lot of ruckus was raised because of that they didn't fill the position. In fact, they dedicated a McNally room in the Tribune Tower. And I wrote a column berating them for that. Now, the true story, during the interview lunch, I went out with the editorial page editor and the editor of the paper. Bruce Stoll, the editorial page editor, turns to me and verbatim quotes a paragraph from that column. We're just going, oh, how dare they do this? It's a travesty, blah, blah, blah. He goes, do you still believe that? Because he talks like that. Do you still believe that? And I looked at him and went, yeah. Because I can guarantee you that Jeff McNally wanted that position filled. So, and from that, somehow they still hired me. So that's it. It was really that hard and that simple.
One more.
Okay.
Just a quick one on that. You have such a tremendous influence if you think about it, because people will read no matter what opinion they do. To bring education to the points of view that you're putting out in your cartoons, I think a point that was incredibly so. We were talking about the question of whether or not you would characterize somebody as African American or white or something like that in the Obama business. I remember a Trudeau cartoon in Dewsbury, which showed a couple of his standard features. You know, the guys talking as they're watching television after the election, and one of the guys is African American, and he's a character everybody had come to know, and one of his colleagues, and they're all out there in bunkers someplace in Iraq, and they're saying, you know, Obama's elected, it's over the top. And this obvious white guy, fellow soldier, says to his friend, he's half white, you know. And the other guy responds, that must make you very proud. And that's a kind of subtle, factual humor. It also is a fact.
Right.
Of his heritage. But at the same time, it shows you how people might actually interact who might be completely different points of view. I just wonder, in cartooning, sometimes it's easy to go for the cheap, slick, you know, in-your-face kind of thing. But how about education and that? Subtlety is very, very powerful.
It's very powerful, but if it's 4 o'clock and your deadline is 5, not so much.
One question right there.
It's not as complicated.
Okay.
It's not as complicated, but how do you decide what to write about and how do you choose which side you want to be on?
That's not complicated.
That's our next panel.
You know, I just will cite one little anecdote. The other day, somebody called me at my office. I work in New Orleans, and so even though the state of Louisiana is very Republican, the city of New Orleans is very Democratic, and that's where the heart of the circulation of my paper is. And so my cartoons run afoul of the readership a little bit more often than someone else might. So someone called in and said, you need to know who your audience is. And I said, ma'am, I don't have an audience, I have a philosophy. And that's the whole point, is that you're not trying to please people. What you're trying to do is to express your opinion. You need to have core values. And everyone in here has, what grade are you all in? 8th grade. Well, I just want to say to you all in particular that you should read lots of different opinions and formulate what you believe in your heart for yourselves. Don't sit in a crowd of people and let, you know, the crowd ethos take over and you think like them, or don't think automatically reflexively the way your parents do. Read, get informed, and develop your opinions. And you can have any opinion in this country as long as you can defend it. I mean, you can have opinions that you can't defend. They're all over the place. But it's much better to have an opinion that you can defend, and then, I mean, you can disagree with people, you always will.
Steve,
But
that's right. The thing is, it's not enough to know what you believe. You have to know why you believe.
that's right.
And the only way to know why you believe something is to study.
Right.
And read.
Reading stuff.
Yeah. You're very right. I just want to say, you're right.
In terms of what I think in terms of what, speaking for myself, but I think probably for most cartoonists, you know, what do we choose to cover? I mean, in a given day, there might be 100 stories that you could draw a cartoon about, right? Or write a column about. And so, you know, what do you write this one thing about? And for me, what I'm always trying to do is to bring something new to the discussion. You know, I mean, if I think, you know, I have a point of view that's pretty much the same as everyone else's, like after 9/11, a lot of people's opinion about 9/11 was it sure is sad when people kill 3,000 people. And so I didn't think that was a really interesting opinion, even though it's a widespread opinion and one that I shared. So I didn't do that cartoon, like, boy, it sure is sad when 3,000 people get killed. So I like to try to bring something new to the discussion, even though I'm a lefty. I want to make people think about an issue in a new and different way. And that's what I look for in other people's cartoons. And some of my favorite cartoonists are conservatives as well, who are able to do that. It's not about the ability to be original is the most important thing. I mean, if you're going to just contribute nothing to the discussion, don't do it.
I grew up on the U.S.-Mexico border. My parents are immigrants from Mexico, and the immigration system in the U.S. is all over the place. To paraphrase Steve said, it's all over the map. So to me, the defense of immigrants' rights and their treatment as human beings is my core. regardless of what laws pass here, what laws pass there, laws change, but human beings are always human beings and deserve human rights. And that's my main concept. And of course, there's, I can turn a Mars rover cartoon into an immigration cartoon. So, you know what's on my mind.
Yeah.
From a practical standpoint, I think we all do read a zillion things a day. Now with the internet, you have access to every paper on the planet. You have a few that you read, and you find that one issue that, as Steve mentions, the one thing that you care about, the one thing that touches your core. And it can be a small issue. Those are tough to do if you're in a popular art like we are, because you have to explain to a lot of your audience what it is you're talking about. But once you can do that and you can move forward, I'm guessing part of what you're asking is the process, am I right, too? And so that's it. I read a bunch of newspapers, and my wife, who sits across the breakfast table from me, has to hear me say every, God, son of a gun, I tear it out. And so I'm handing her a paper that looks like Swiss cheese. It's kind of, and then you go forward and you kind of try and think, as Ted mentioned, to be as original as you can in expressing your outrage at that issue. It's that simple.
All right, and with that, we need to wrap things up. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you again to the Library of Congress and Sarah Duke and Martha Kennedy. Good job, gentlemen.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.